Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with a love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums. Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? 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 We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo news. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi.
Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, aquariums, conservation, and general animal weirdness. Couple friendly reminders at the top here. This is a crowd-sourced Zoo News program, so if you see anything that is Zoo News worthy, feel free to tag me in it on the socials at Rossifari, on TikTok at RossifariPod, or email it to me, rossifaripod@gmail.com. And if you do that, I'll say your name at the end of the episode. Before we get to anything else, I do want to give a little bit of a shout out to my last two guests on my Tuesday interview episodes. So if you haven't been listening to those, I know there are some people that are very much just into the zoo news. I highly recommend that you go back and listen to the last two episodes. We had an episode with Jamie Delk, who is at the Dallas Zoo now, but was talking all about her time when she was a keeper and then decided that it was time to leave the field, and then kind of how she felt basically called back to the field. And then we talked to Emily Clare, who had been at Zoo Knoxville and is now at the Nashville Zoo, who talked about her going through and coming out the other side of grieving after losing 4 zebras in a short period of time. There were lots of very thoughtful things said by both guests. There were lots of tears. There was all kinds of stuff going on. And not only am I proud of those episodes, and more importantly, proud of the people who were so open and honest and amazing about those things, but the response has been phenomenal. So many people have been so touched by what those two women shared. And I mean, that's the goal of this podcast, right? So I'm grateful to be the storyteller who is there to facilitate them getting to share their stories and to help guide those and craft those a little bit. But mostly I'm just wildly thankful to the both of them and to everyone who's reached out to tell me how impactful they were. A few people actually told me that they had to, take breaks while listening, especially to Emily's episode, as it gets very heavy at times, but that they were really excited to return and kind of go through the entire story with Emily. So thank you to those guests. And if you have not listened to them yet, I highly recommend that you do. And now we're going to move on from that to a very exciting programming announcement. On Tuesday, I'm going to be releasing my first ever holiday shopping guide episode. I've been spending this week conducting interviews with people from 5 different companies of different sizes that all have one thing in common. They make amazing products for animal lovers. So if you're going to be doing any gifting during the holiday season, or just want to get yourself a little treat as the year winds down, you'll be able to hear my suggestions for that. And it's not just me talking, you'll actually hear from the incredible people making the products, and many of them have set up special discounts for Rossifari listeners, so that's something that you can take advantage of. The products we cover include a wide variety of stuff, including stickers, pins, apparel, calendars, water bottles, stuffed animals, and more. And all of the items are things that I have and use and love. So it is coming from a very much a place of authenticity. And we talk about that in a lot of the interviews. And that's not all. One of the shops I'll be featuring is Cappy Tales, which is a shop that I've been a brand ambassador for and have shared with y'all for quite a while now, mostly just on my socials. Well, Laura, the brains behind Cappy Trails, and I have some very cool announcements coming on this Tuesday's episode, but I want to share one of them with y'all now. Laura has designed and is producing the official 2024 Rossifari holiday ornament. It is a wooden ornament featuring Laura's amazing drawings of a red panda, a binturong, a tree kangaroo, and a sea turtle, all done up in holiday outfits, along with Rossifari on there. And these 4 characters are amazing, and I think they're going to become like recurring characters with some of my merch moving forward and stuff. And they are ready to brighten your Christmas tree or your menorah, or even just to hang around as a random winter decoration. So I'm really excited about these ornaments, and you can check them out by going to cappytrails.com or by checking out my social media pages, where I'll be linking to all the things. They are live as of the release of this recording. They are also limited edition, and they're only going to be available for a limited time, which I think might mean the same thing. I don't know. I wrote it that way. Whatever. But anyway, the point is, make sure you check them out and secure your Rossifari ornament soon. And again, that's not the only cool thing you're going to be hearing from Laura. So make sure you tune in on Tuesday's episode. You'll also be hearing from some other amazing companies. So other than that amazingly exciting news, there's not much to report here from my life. I will say this may end up being a little bit of a shorter episode because I've been working my butt off on the gifts episode this week and such. But with that said, I think it is time for... All right. So last week I mentioned that I was working on a headline story and that I was really excited about it. But then there was a weird twist as the week went on, so I ended up kind of abandoning it for the week. So we are going to start this week by looking at both the original story and the follow-up situation, though I don't think I really have a big resolution to it in my own brain at this point. On November 12th and 13th this year, the AZA hosted its first ever Animal Wellbeing Summit. This took place in New Orleans and was hosted by the Audubon Aquarium of the Americas with a promise to do 4 things. Cultivate culture, meaning to drive leadership strategies that foster the AZA culture of well-being. Connect diverse collaborators in the hopes of facilitating dialogue on animal well-being among a diverse audience. Share knowledge by exploring innovations in welfare science and technology across species. And to celebrate common missions by exploring different communication strategies that engage audiences. The summit was not just for members of the AZA, but instead aimed to bring together professionals from other zoo and aquarium associations, academia, veterinary medicine, human psychology, laboratory science, livestock management, fisheries management, animal advocacy groups, and more. It was recommended for curators, welfare managers, communications experts, educators, executive leadership, and welfare scientists. And all of this seemed pretty darn cool to me, and that was going to be my focus. Just like, wow, this is cool, and this is happening, and yay. And that, there is some of that. But there was one part that might have caught your attention as I was going through all of those lists. Animal advocacy groups were invited. And I actually saw that and clocked it, but I figured the thought was that if people from those groups attended and actually got educated on what animal welfare looks like at the AZA, maybe they could start to understand that zoos are not bad places, but at least not accredited ones anyway. But where the controversy comes in is this. People from those groups were actually brought in as speakers for the summit. And that has not gone over well with a lot of people at AZA institutions and actually with people at non-AZA institutions as well. But we'll get to that part. So the people who are mad about this are big mad. They do not like anything about the fact that these people were invited to the conference at all, and especially not to speak. In fact, 1 week before this summit was held, A different one was held by an animal rights group called Pioneers for Animal Welfare Society, Inc., or PAWS for short. PAWS is dedicated not only to the elimination of any animals in human care beyond rescue and rehabilitation followed by release, but is even interested in the reduction of the number of companion animals, including pets, that people have. So yeah, it is one of those animal groups. And their conference this year was called Ending Wild Animals as Entertainment, with a major focus on the organization's goals to end all zoos. 3 of the people who spoke at that conference then packed up their luggage and headed to New Orleans to speak at the Animal Wellbeing Summit. Hosted again by the AZA, an organization that PAWS wants to get rid of entirely along with all of their members. The idea of anti-zoo people lecturing AZA curators and welfare managers and such about animal welfare did not sit well with many of the keepers that brought this topic to my attention or that I've discussed it with. And yeah, the thing about it to me is that it shouldn't have been a huge surprise to anyone who has been paying attention to how the AZA has approached these groups over the last few years. Ever since Dan Ash took over the leadership of the AZA, he has made it clear that he wants the organization to be able to dialogue with its detractors. I think, and I've heard him say various things, but I don't have quotes for you right now, so I'm going to couch this as it is my thought, that his take is that if you include the anti-zoo crowd and show them how great AZA zoos are, they will maybe calm down a little bit, back off, and understand that these can be good places that can even be seen as true sanctuaries for their animals. And this relationship that the AZA has built with these organizations has included having some interesting speakers from outside the industry at various AZA conferences, partnering with groups like PETA on goals both organizations agreed on, like getting the Big Cat Public Safety Act passed, and now including those voices at the Wellbeing Summit. And I've heard people argue that if the AZA is the gold standard, they shouldn't need to bring in people from groups, especially groups that are focused on destroying zoos, to educate their people. I've heard it called embarrassing and unfortunate and all kinds of bad stuff. They are also concerned about the AZA giving legitimacy to these groups who can now say their mission is so important and so good that even the AZA brings them in to help with their welfare. On the other hand, I do also get the idea that bringing people to the table is always a good idea, and that collaboration for the sake of the animals is worth it. We've talked a lot on here about how conservation requires dealing with people that you don't agree with on everything and how people have to come together to help save species. And one could argue that that could be true for welfare as well. You know, I mean, it's certainly a valid thought. And I think it makes an interesting controversy. And I do see both sides of it. So I'm honestly curious to hear your take on this. So if you have one, feel free to message me. And there is one other part of this that I want to address, which I think is interesting. I definitely get the idea that people at AZA institutions are not happy about this development. Some people, I should say some people. But it turns out, as I mentioned at the top of this dive, that people at unaccredited zoos, ZAA accredited zoos, and beyond also have a big problem with the AZA cozying up to the anti-zoo crowd. These people think the AZA has decided it is too big and too, for lack of a better word, good to fail. So they are interacting with the anti-zoo crowd because they aren't concerned about them. But people at non-AZA institutions don't like seeing the AZA partner with these groups because the groups do have an easier time attacking non-AZA facilities. And yeah, there's a lot of kind of dissent from the non-AZA crowd that the AZA is doing too much to legitimatize these groups. And yeah, it's definitely interesting. And actually, some of the people who I talked to about this did point out to me that if these groups are able to get rid of unaccredited zoos or maybe zoos accredited by other organizations, then these same groups won't magically disband. Instead, their next step will be to go after AZA zoos, and the other zoos won't be there to stand up for the AZA. So it is certainly a unique way to look at the situation, and I've definitely seen some analogies to certain people voting against their interests and stuff. And I won't go into all of that, but lots of people have lots of thoughts about this situation. And like I said, I would be very curious to hear yours. So feel free to message me if you have them. And that brings us to our births for the week. The Houston Zoo has welcomed a male jaguar cub to the family to mother Vita. Despite being a first-time mom, Vita is doing a great job with the little one, so they are currently hanging out together behind the scenes. And that is not the only good news from the Houston Zoo. 34-year-old Asian elephant Shanti gave birth to a 314-pound female elephant calf named Kirby. Both mom and the baby are doing super well and should be visible in the near future. So congrats to the Houston Zoo on not one, but two absolutely incredible births. And apparently mom was in labor for like 19 hours. And so, yeah, that's just craziness. 314-pound baby. I'm just saying all you human mothers out there need to stop making such a big deal. No, I'm kidding. I love you all. Please don't eat me. I'm kidding. I love you. Highland Wildlife Park has welcomed a vicuna calf, the first ever born at the park. Vicuna are a camelid species native to South America. They're not super common in zoos, so this is a really cool birth and just a really adorable baby. The Lincoln Children's Zoo has announced the birth of a baby giraffe. The male giraffe was just under 6 feet tall at the time of his birth to mom Allie and dad Joey. And if you're listening to this, you can already see the little one out on his habitat at the zoo. This also has led to a real period of reckoning for me. You see, I have a rule, for those of you who listen, you know this, that I like to call all babies of a species by the first syllable of the species name and then let. So like bintlet and pandlet and that kind of thing, right? Dogs go from puppies to doglets, whatever. And I've realized that the entire time I've been doing this, I've been saying girafflet. But giraffe is 2 syllables, and so it would be a gerlet. So it would be gerlet. And I've been saying that wrong the entire time I've been doing this. So congrats to the Lincoln Children's Zoo on the birth of their new gerlet. I don't like it as much, but hey, a rule's a rule. And then last but not least, in births this week, the North Carolina Zoo has welcomed a new baby Wally, also known as a batong, to the Desert Dome family. This is the second time the parents have bred at the zoo. And yes, one of the people who sent this to me did so specifically because they wanted to hear me try to say the names of the species. Wally, I think, and batong. I feel confident in batong, but yeah, hopefully I did it right. And that brings us to our deaths for the week. The Milwaukee County Zoo has said goodbye to Patty, the female hippo that called the zoo home. Patty was 55 years old, making her the oldest hippo at an AZA facility in the United States. The median life expectancy of a hippo in human care is 36.7 years, so 55 is a truly amazing age to reach. Despite her advanced age, Patty was healthy right up until the end. She didn't start to show discomfort until one day of rapid decline, which made the decision to euthanize very obviously correct and maybe took away some of the pain of watching that slow decline that we see in humans and animals sometimes. She will be greatly missed, but congrats to Patty's care team for doing such an amazing job taking care of her. And then we have a sad story out of Atlanta. Zoo Atlanta welcomed a female western lowland gorilla baby to mother Canberra recently. Baby and mom were both doing well and were actually showing lots of great signs, but the baby was not observed nursing. As such, the zoo staff removed the baby for a quick exam, but then returned her to Canberra rather quickly. And that alone that shows, how great the relationships are with the care team and the gorillas at the zoo. And once the baby got back to mom, she was actually observed nursing, which is really exciting. Unfortunately, the next morning, the baby was found deceased. A necropsy was performed, but the results will take a while. But obviously, this is a terribly sad loss for the entire Zoo Atlanta family. So we just send all our love to that team. And then moving on to our other zoo news stories, our friends at the Columbus Zoo have greatly expanded their elephant habitat. The new area adds an additional 17,730 square feet for the elephants to roam. The new area also includes a new training panel, modified pool, enrichment panels, and more, with many of the additions being focused on, as you may have figured out, enrichment and also socialization. I'm really excited to check out this new area when I can get back to Columbus. It has been far too long since I've been there, and I miss that facility. This next story really excites me. Conservation staff at the Santa Barbara Zoo recently traveled to the Channel Islands to help vaccinate wild island foxes against the canine distemper virus. This was an especially important trip because a supply issue caused many of the foxes to go without the vaccine in the summer when they are usually given it. Now, how important is this? Well, in the late 1900s, more than 90% of the population of island foxes died in a single outbreak of canine distemper. So protecting the current individuals is hugely important. Obviously, this is great work by the team at the zoo. Wang Wang and Fu Ni, the last remaining giant pandas in Australia, have officially left the Adelaide Zoo and headed back to China. To my knowledge, there have not been any announcements of any bears coming back to the country, but that's also how it was in the U.S. until suddenly a bunch of announcements were made. So I'll be curious to see if panda diplomacy continues in Australia. And if you are one of my Aussie listeners, I wouldn't panic too much yet because everyone panicked in the U.S. and then bears just started popping up like every 30 feet. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but we've been getting bears again. The Oregon Zoo recently stepped in to help an Arctic fox that was illegally being kept as a pet. The fox was confiscated by authorities and transferred to the Bird Alliance of Oregon, which has been caring for her for the last 2 weeks, but she has now been transferred to the Oregon Zoo, I assume because the Bird Alliance realized that she wasn't, in fact, a bird. The Oregon Zoo is now caring for the little one and teaching it what zoo life will be like before she is transferred to her forever home at Oxnard Park Zoo in Wisconsin. It is so cool hearing how all three of these organizations have come together to help one little fox. And yes, for those wondering, I was, in fact, terrified when I looked at this story and realized I was going to have to say the word Oregon, Oregon, origami, whatever, multiple times. And then last but not least this week, our friends at Mote Marine Lab are officially open again after an 8-week closure due to storm damage from multiple hurricanes. It is so great to know they are open and doing the thing again. And if you go to Mote, you'll get to see 2 manatees hanging out again. We followed the story of the introduction of Lou to resident manatee Buffett a bit, and that part is officially done now, and the pair is living well together. After the tragic loss of Hugh, it is so great to see Mote have a pair of manatees again after the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service determined that this would be the best thing for both manatees. I am beyond excited to see everything getting back to normal for Mote. And that brings us to
Conservation! Conservation! News time! Oh, yeah!
All right, so just two quick conservation stories this week. First of all, we have another uplisting to discuss. The bantang, a cattle species that calls Southeast Asia home, has officially been declared critically endangered. The good news is that while the population is declining overall and at a really unfortunate rate, there are areas where the population is actually increasing, specifically in parts of Thailand. Why is that population succeeding? Strong conservation efforts in the area are working well. And that's important not just because, like, woo, yay, those conservationists, but it means the species already has a blueprint of a successful conservation strategy that just needs to be implemented elsewhere to hopefully downlist them again, preferably in the near future. But yeah, so a very sad story, but also a bit of a hopeful one. And then the other one is interesting, and it's going to be one we need to keep an eye on. Avian influenza has officially made its way to Oahu. This is the first case of avian influenza ever documented in Hawaii. The government of Hawaii works very hard to keep diseases and invasive species out of its ecosystem, which is very unique and home to lots of species that don't exist elsewhere. As of now, there is no way to know how the disease arrived on the island or what effect it will have, but it has been found in wild birds, and there have been multiple casualties detected already. So, this one is definitely worth keeping an eye on, and is a bit of a problem to put it mildly. But here's hoping. I mean, at some point we've got to figure out how to fix this, right? At some point, maybe, please.
In other news.
All right, so a follow-up from the last 2 weeks. As of this recording, 32 of the 46 escaped monkeys in South Carolina have been returned to the Alpha Genesis lab they escaped from. You know, the lab where they were pretty shocked that 46 monkeys escaped, because usually they only lose 1 or 2 at a time. Yeesh. Multiple sanctuaries have reached out to the organization offering to take the monkeys in, but they have been rebuffed in their efforts so far, or just not heard back at all. And of course, while the majority are now in, this means there are still 14 monkeys that have not been returned at this time. 14 monkeys still wandering around in South Carolina. And they aren't alone. That's because 2 pet emus also escaped, this time from their home in South Carolina, and have eluded capture. As of the time of this recording, the 2 have not been captured yet anyway, but I think they will be, but hard to say. And that's not a huge story in and of itself, but it is a reminder that maybe people should stop having crazy exotic pets, especially huge, super strong birds, since the owner of the birds said they knocked him down as they escaped and he couldn't get a hand on them, because of course he couldn't, because they're emus. But also, that means that 2 emus and 14 monkeys are just roaming around. Just roaming around in South Carolina right now. Just roaming around. Cool. Good job, South Carolina. Cool.
Animal, animal, animal holidays. Animal, animal, animal holidays.
All right, y'all. It is November, which is Manatee Awareness Month. And as for your individual holidays, I don't know if this counts as a holiday, but the Thursday before this episode drops, Thursday, November 21st, is a day where the Browns won a football game. And it was a good game. I watched the game. It was a good game. And I I don't know if that counts as an actual holiday, but I guess it's kind of like an early Christmas miracle. So that's something. And then as far as your individual days, you only get one this week, which is the 24th, which is both Evolution Day and Walrus Day. Because again, we just suck at splitting up the animal holidays. But hey, there it is. And those are your animal holiday for the week. All right, so there you have it. Another episode of Rossifari Zoo News is done. Don't forget to be back here on Tuesday for the gifts episode. It's really exciting and going to be really fun. And it will help you save some money on some cool gifts that you might want to give this holiday season or just winter. You do you. I will also have some very exciting news for my patrons that you're going to get to hear about on Tuesday. And I think you'll be very excited about that news. And speaking of my patrons, you can support the podcast for as little as $3 a month by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. I'd also like to take a moment to thank my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, and Kevin Williams. Then, of course, we have to thank everyone who contributed to this week's episode, including Anya Keene, Colleen Lenehan, Kim Cooley-Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbuck, Jody Allen, Jacob Zinn, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky, The Malenskys, Kristen Dickey, Jess Wells, Justin Williams, Dr. Zoe Rossi, Lizard Dunlevy, Sam Evans, Matt Patford, Chris Gross, Hillary Hankey, Dr. Laura Shank, Dylan Hoy, Dr. Natalie Taco, Yan Yoshioka. I said Yan. Sorry, Ann. I'm just going to leave that in because I think you'll think it's funny. Yan. Anyway, and Jay Meredith. Thank you all for contributing to this week's episode. Be back on Tuesday. And remember, friends, the words newsy credits backwards are Snyder Kiswen.
The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.